I was a quiet intern, mostly making copies and delivering coffee, when I noticed an elderly man standing alone in our busy corporate lobby. He looked frustrated as people walked past him without paying attention. When I realized he was deaf and trying to communicate, I stepped forward and signed a simple, "Hello. Can I help you?" I had no idea the company's CEO was observing from the mezzanine above. Before we continue, I'd like to ask, have you ever learned a skill to support someone you care about? Share your story in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring content like this. Now let me take you back to that life-changing Tuesday morning. 6 months earlier, I felt like the most unnoticed person at Meridian Communications. At 22, I was a junior marketing intern, spending my days making photocopies, organizing supply closets, and trying to stay invisible in one of Chicago's top advertising agencies. I usually ate lunch alone at my desk, chose the stairs to avoid small talk, and had never spoken in a meeting, not even once. It hadn't always been this way. In high school, I had been confident, outgoing, even popular, but college brought a series of setbacks and rejections that slowly reduced my confidence. By the time I graduated with a communications degree, I felt like a smaller version of who I once was. The internship at Meridian was meant to be a fresh start, a chance to prove myself, but instead it became another place where I felt insignificant. The one thing that truly gave my life meaning was my younger brother, Danny. He was 8 years old and had been born deaf. While our parents struggled to learn sign language, I committed to it with unexpected dedication. I spent hours practicing, watching videos, and attending community center classes. Danny became my motivation to master something meaningful, something that could genuinely help someone. By the time I joined Meridian, I was fluent in American Sign Language. It was the one skill I was truly proud of, even though it didn't seem relevant to my job. In the corporate environment of marketing campaigns and client presentations, my ability to communicate with the deaf community felt valuable, yet unused, like a talent that didn't quite fit the setting. The morning that changed everything began like any other. It was a Tuesday in October, and the Meridian office was filled with its usual fast-paced energy. We were preparing for a major client presentation, and everyone was focused on their own urgent tasks. I was assigned to the reception area, organizing materials, when I noticed him. He was an elderly man, likely in his 70s, dressed in a well-tailored navy suit. His silver hair was neatly styled, and he carried himself with quiet confidence. But his eyes showed frustration and sadness that immediately caught my attention. He was at the reception desk trying to communicate with Jessica, our head receptionist. Jessica was kind but extremely busy, and it was clear she was struggling with the communication barrier. "Sir, I'm sorry, but I don't understand," she said. "Do you have an appointment? Can you write down who you're here to see?" The man gestured toward the elevators, his mouth forming words that couldn't be heard. Then I noticed his hand movements and expressions. He was signing. I watched as Jessica turned to assist another visitor, unintentionally leaving him behind. He stood there, looking increasingly lost. Employees passed by, executives, creatives, assistants, but no one stopped. My first instinct was to stay where I was. I was just an intern, and my supervisor had clearly told me to focus on presentation tasks. But as I saw his shoulders drop slightly, I thought about Danny, about how it feels to be overlooked. I decided to act. I approached him, nervous but determined, and signed, "Hello, my name is Catherine. Can I help you?" His reaction was immediate. His expression shifted to relief, and he smiled for the first time. "You sign," he responded, clearly grateful. I was starting to think no one here would understand me. I apologized for the difficulty he'd faced and asked how I could assist. He explained that he was there to see his son, but didn't have an appointment. When I asked for his son's name, he hesitated briefly before signing, "Michael Hartwell." I froze for a moment. Michael Hartwell was the CEO of Meridian Communications. Trying to stay composed, I confirmed, "Mr. Hartwell is your son?" He nodded, explaining that he was nearby and hoped to visit briefly. It was clear this meant a lot to him. I offered to help arrange a meeting and guided him to a seating area. Next came the challenge, contacting the CEO's office. I reached out to his executive assistant, Patricia, and explained the situation. After a pause, she said she would check. When I returned to the visitor, Robert, As he introduced himself, we began talking in sign language. He shared stories about his career as an architect, his late wife, and his pride in his son. He also spoke about the distance that had grown between them over time. After waiting for a while, we were informed that the CEO was unavailable for at least another hour. Robert suggested leaving, not wanting to inconvenience anyone. I reassured him and offered to show him around the building while he waited. He agreed, and I gave him a full tour of the company. We visited different departments, met employees, and discussed the work being done. I translated conversations and helped him understand the environment his son had built. Throughout the tour, I knew I was neglecting my assigned tasks. My supervisor sent multiple messages asking for my location, but I continued, recognizing how meaningful the experience was for him. At one point, I noticed a man observing us from the mezzanine. It was Michael Hartwell. He was watching quietly as his father interacted with the company and as I facilitated communication. I felt anxious, knowing I might face consequences, but the tour continued. When we finally returned to the lobby, it was late afternoon. Robert thanked me sincerely, saying the experience helped him understand his son's world better. At that moment, my supervisor approached, clearly upset. She called me aside, ready to address my absence. Before she could continue, a voice interrupted. "Actually, I need to speak with Miss Walsh first." I turned to see Michael Hartwell standing behind me. He acknowledged my actions and stated calmly that I had been helping his father and that I had done so exceptionally well. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Then he turned to his father and began signing, carefully, not perfectly, but with clear effort. "I'm sorry I kept you waiting," he signed. "I didn't know you were here until I saw you with Catherine. I've been watching you both for the past hour. I haven't seen you look that happy in years." Robert's expression was full of joy and surprise. "You've been learning to sign." "I've been trying," Michael admitted, his movements now more confident. "I should have started years ago. I should have made more effort to communicate with you in your language, instead of always expecting you to adjust to mine." Father and son embraced there in the middle of the busy lobby, and I felt tears form in my eyes. Around us, the usual activity of the office slowed as people paused to notice the moment. When they stepped back, Michael turned to me. "Miss Walsh, could I speak with you in my office? There are a few things I'd like to discuss." My heart raced as I followed Michael Hartwell to the elevator, with Robert walking beside us. Margaret had stepped away, likely trying to process what had just happened and how to respond to the situation involving her intern and the CEO. The executive elevator was quiet except for the low hum of movement. I glanced at Robert, who looked genuinely happy, and at Michael, whose expression remained focused and thoughtful. Michael's office matched everything I had imagined: floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline, refined furniture that likely cost more than my yearly salary, and walls filled with awards and company milestones. Yet what stood out most was how impersonal it felt, as though very little of Michael himself was present in the space. "Please, sit," Michael said, gesturing to the chairs in front of his desk. Robert and I sat down, and instead of taking his seat behind the desk, Michael chose the chair beside his father. It was a small decision, but it made the setting feel more direct and personal. "Miss Walsh," Michael began, "I owe you both an apology and an explanation." I looked at him, confused. "An apology, sir? I'm the one who should be apologizing. I was supposed to be working on presentation materials, and instead He raised his hand to stop me. "You did exactly what you should have done, what I wish more of my employees would do." He paused, looking at his father with a mix of appreciation and regret. My father has visited this office only 3 times in the 10 years since I became CEO. Each time, he was treated as an interruption, a distraction from important work. Each time, I watched from a distance as my own staff made him feel unwelcome in his own son's workplace. Robert reached over and touched his son's arm, signing something softly. Michael nodded and continued. "Today was different. Today, I watched a 22-year-old intern step away from her assigned duties to spend 3 hours making my father feel respected, valued, and included. I watched her translate conversations, build connections, and treat him not as an obstacle, but as a guest." His voice became heavier with meaning. I watched her give him something I haven't given him in years, the feeling that he belongs in my world. I felt my eyes fill with emotion. Mr. Hartwell, I have a younger brother who is deaf, and I know how it feels when people overlook him or treat him as if he isn't there. I couldn't stand to see that happen to your father. And that, he said, is exactly why I need to speak with you about your future here. My heart dropped. I assumed this was leading to a formal dismissal. I understand if you need to let me go, I said quietly. I know I didn't complete my assigned work today. Michael looked genuinely surprised. Let you go? Miss Walsh, I want to offer you a job. A full-time role, not an internship. I stared at him, unsure I had heard correctly. I'm sorry. What? What I saw today showed me something this company is missing, a real commitment to accessibility and inclusion. We mention diversity in our mission statement. We include policies in our handbook, but we don't truly practice it. I want to change that, and I want your help. Robert smiled broadly, signing quickly to his son. Michael responded with a brief sign before turning back to me. I'm creating a new position, Director of Accessibility and Inclusion. Your responsibility would be to ensure that Meridian Communications is accessible to everyone, employees, clients, and visitors. You would develop training programs, establish policies, and advocate for individuals who might otherwise be overlooked. You would report directly to me. I felt overwhelmed. Mr. Hartwell, I'm just an intern. I don't have experience in human resources or policy development. I haven't even completed my degree yet. I'm still in my final semester. You have something more valuable than experience, he replied. You have empathy. You have the ability to see people as individuals, not inconveniences. And you have a skill set that could reshape how this company operates. He paused briefly. The position would come with a competitive salary, full benefits, and the authority to introduce meaningful change. You would report directly to me. I looked at Robert, who was clearly excited, then back at Michael. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it, Michael suggested. Take the weekend, but I hope you'll accept. This company needs someone like you. I need someone like you. The rest of the meeting moved quickly, filled with details about the role, discussions about salary and benefits that felt overwhelming, and early ideas for the cultural changes needed across the organization. By the time I left Michael's office, everything in my life felt different. Robert hugged me goodbye, signing his gratitude repeatedly. You've given me my son back, he told me, and you've given him something he didn't even realize he was missing. Michael walked us to the elevator, and as the doors began to close, he said, Catherine, thank you for recognizing him, for understanding what truly mattered. That evening, I went home and called my parents, then Danny, trying to explain everything that had happened. Danny was the most excited. You're going to help other deaf people at work? He signed during our video call. That's amazing. You'll be like a superhero for people like me. His excitement was contagious, and by Monday morning, I knew my answer. I began my new role the following week. My first responsibility was to conduct a full accessibility audit of the building and company policies. What I discovered was both discouraging and motivating. Meridian Communications, like many organizations, had good intentions but lacked a clear understanding of what true inclusion required. Over the next 6 months, I introduced major changes. We installed visual alert systems across the building. We brought in ASL interpreters for company meetings and events. We developed accessibility standards for marketing materials and presentations. Most importantly, we launched mandatory inclusion training for all employees, starting with the leadership team. These sessions were eye-opening. I invited speakers from the deaf community, including Robert, who shared his experiences and helped employees understand the real impact of their actions, or lack of action. I also led basic sign language classes during lunch hours and was surprised by how many employees were eager to learn. Margaret, my former supervisor, became one of the most engaged participants. I keep thinking about that day, she told me after one session. I was so focused on deadlines and tasks that I completely overlooked what actually mattered. I don't want to repeat that mistake. The improvements extended beyond accessibility for the deaf community. We expanded efforts to support employees and visitors with mobility challenges, visual impairments, and other disabilities. We partnered with local organizations to improve inclusive hiring practices. We also redesigned our website and marketing materials to ensure better accessibility. However, the most significant change was cultural. The company, once focused mainly on efficiency and productivity, began to value empathy and inclusion as essential principles. Employees started supporting each other in ways that hadn't existed before. The lobby, once a place where visitors like Robert were overlooked, became a welcoming space where everyone was treated with respect and dignity. 6 months after that Tuesday, Meridian Communications received a national award for workplace inclusion. At the ceremony, Michael asked me to accept the award on behalf of the company. This recognition belongs to everyone at Meridian who embraced change and chose to see inclusion not as a challenge, but as an opportunity to improve, I said in my speech. But above all, it belongs to someone who showed me that the most important skill in business isn't closing deals or managing budgets, it's recognizing the humanity in every person you meet. In the audience, Robert smiled with pride, signing his applause. Next to him, Michael was smiling as well, and it was clear their relationship had improved. They now had lunch together every Friday, and Michael had learned enough ASL to hold meaningful conversations with his father about both work and family. The intern who once felt invisible had found her voice by helping others find theirs. In the process, I realized that sometimes the most powerful action is simply noticing someone who is being overlooked and choosing to truly see them for who they are. My younger brother Danny began visiting the office regularly, and seeing him interact confidently with employees who had learned sign language just for him was deeply meaningful. He was right. I had become a kind of superhero. Not in a traditional sense, but in a way that supports a world where everyone belongs, is recognized, and is valued. And it all started with a simple greeting signed to a man standing alone in a busy lobby. Sometimes, small actions create meaningful change. Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to pause, notice, and care. And sometimes, when you choose to reach out to someone who has been overlooked, you realize you're not only changing their experience, you're changing your own. An impactful story that shows how a simple act of inclusion can influence individuals and entire organizations. What are your thoughts on Catherine's decision to step away from her assigned tasks to help Robert? Share your opinion in the comments below. If this story inspired you, consider liking the video and subscribing for more content that highlights the power of human kindness. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.